Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Good to see you all and good to be back. I know it's been a while, but had a Panchami Mataji wanted me to come in January and I was a little busy. We were preparing to go on pilgrimage to India in February and I had so much work and I was working on weekends, so it was not an ideal situation. So it's good to be back right after the pilgrimage because I needed a lot more purification coming back. I also want to thank the management here at Isckon Oakville for inviting me, and also the tutelage of Kashyap Muni Prabhu and Panchami Mataji. They have been nourishing all of you for so many years, and I see that, and I feel very welcome, and I feel really warm being here. And thank you so much, Prabhu. And also whenever I visit Saskatoon and see Vaikunta Prabhu and Anandi Mataji, I feel because of Kashyap Muni Prabhu's cultivation, it goes on to them, and they also host me very nicely. So I just want to thank you, Prabhu, for all that you and Mataji do. So just give a round of applause for them. All right. So today we are reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 17, verse 16, which is titled The Three Divisions of Faith. And I believe I have some notes. So chapter 17, verse 16. So one thing that's interesting is the three modes of material nature, which is sattva, rajas, and tamas, goodness, passion, and darkness. And maybe Prabhu's putting it on, but if you want to come a little bit closer, there's plenty of space, just so that you can be a little close to the, and if you need a cushion, if you want to sit, like that, that's also okay. So three modes of material nature is a symptom of spiritual science. We have goodness, passion, and darkness. So this is irrespective of whether you are a theist, atheist, I belong to this faith, this religion, that religion. It applies to everyone. And what I want to express is that Krishna consciousness is not a sectarian dogma, that it's actually a spiritual science. So can anyone explain to me what dogma means? Or a sectarian dogma? What is sectarian and what is dogma? What does those words mean to you?
Forced onto.
Yeah, so dogma very much means that it's very limited. There's some limitations with it. If our way is the only way, right? When it's said, then that's dogmatic. Why is that problematic? Because there may have been a point in time where that belief didn't exist. Or there may be certain places where those beliefs are not taught, even today. So then it becomes a dogma. Right? It's not universal. What's unique about Sanatan Dharma, it is first of all Sanatan, which means always exists. It's always existed throughout time. And even if one may not come to worship or know about Krishna, they'll at least know about God or some inner connection where they make progress on their spiritual path. And karma is always there. It's not that the law of karma is only for people who follow Dharma. Even people who don't follow Dharma, karma is there. So it's a universal law. So that is a good way of pointing out dogma. What about sectarian? What does sectarian mean? So I talked about sectarian dogma, which is what Krishna consciousness is not. But what is sectarian?
One particular sect, especially like limited, that is also a limitation.
It is also a limitation. So sectarian means that only our people, or let's say, people who are born in a certain, let's say, if you had a particular faith and it's only people who are born of a certain ethnicity can practice that spiritual practice. That is sectarian, So that sectarian and dogma, that is what Krishna consciousness is not. So we have to first understand that. And it's also, more importantly, a spiritual science. Just like we have material science. So spiritual science is you take to the process of chanting, hearing, worshipping the deity, reading Vedic literature. And by doing this, you'll make spiritual progress and you'll feel it in your heart. Your heart is melting. You become more humble and you go ahead on the path of Krishna consciousness. So, before we read 17:16, I wanted to mention that chapter 17 talks, it's the three divisions of faith: goodness, passion, darkness. So it talks about faith, for faith can be of three kinds. It also talks about food of three different varieties. It talks about sacrifice or yajna, which is of three different varieties. And it talks about austerity, austerity of the body, austerity of the speech, and austerity of the mind. So we'll focus on austerity of the mind today. And then ultimately, it comes to the point where, okay, there are these three modes of material nature, but beyond the three modes of material nature, Krishna teaches us that there is the Shuddha Sattva platform. And that Shuddha Sattva platform is transcendental activity. So Krishna encourages us to go beyond just even goodness of Sattva. So that is chapter 2, verse 45. And then in the last end of chapter 17, it is said that if one who does not have faith, who performs any sort of sacrifice, charity, yajna, dana, and austerity, it doesn't take place hold in this life or the next. So sometimes, I went to a housewarming program in Mississauga, and the lady of the house says, I don't believe in all this. They're doing some yajna, right? So if you don't have a belief, my husband believes, I don't believe. So it becomes sort of it doesn't have any effect, because that sort of yajna, dana, they're doing it for the sake of doing it. So this will not have very much of an effect. So if you want to do something, do it with proper intention. That's very important. All right, so let's get into 17:16. So again, chapter 17 is divisions of faith, and we're focusing on the mind. Why? Because the mind is of various, it's an attention-seeking magnet, and these days people want to seek our attention, whether it is, ads online or, different types of marketing schemes. They want our attention, and that attention is the big economy where people just get our attention and we're hooked onto it. So let's do that. So mana prasada samyatvam maunam atma vinigraha bhava samshodiriti etat tapomana samuchyate. So mana prasada, satisfaction of the mind, samyatvam, being without duplicity towards others, maunam, gravity, atma, of the self, vinigraha, control, bhava, of one's nature, samasuddhi, purification, iti, thus, etad, this, tapa, austerity, manasam, of the mind, uchite, is said to be. Translation as follows. And satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. Purport. To make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it can be always be thinking of doing good for others. The best training for the mind is gravity and thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. In the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification. And so there is no possibilities of the mind becoming satisfied. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. One can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity, and one should think of the welfare of all. Silence means that one is always thinking of self-realization. The person in Krishna consciousness observes perfect silence in this sense. Control of the mind means detaching the mind from sense enjoyment. One should be straightforward in his dealings and thereby purify existence. All these qualities go together, constitute austerity in mental activities. So that is that verse. So again, it talks about austerity, and what does austerity mean to you? So when I say the word austerity, because I know some of these words that Srila Prabhupada uses tends to be out of the vocabulary of everyday people of these days. So when I say austerity, what does that mean to you? Anybody? Yes? So sacrifice, can you elaborate more?
Like waking up early in the morning.
Yeah, waking up early in the morning, yeah. So most people who have to commute in the greater Toronto area have to wake up early in the morning. They may do so for different reasons than some of how we do it, but they're also doing austerity for a different reason. Yes, Kavya?
We might voluntarily when we accept some kind of discomfort, we go beyond our comfort zone and try to do something.
Yes, yeah.
Voluntarily we are trying to do something so that by keeping a higher purpose or a goal in mind.
Right, so to take upon voluntary discomfort. So that's literally the dictionary definition of austerity. So yes, so but why do we do austerity? So my second question is, okay, that's austerity, but why do we do it? Like why don't we don't want to just enjoy life? Why should we take upon difficulties? Yeah, to remind ourselves we're not the body. So people take austerities all the time. Like I mentioned, if a person's going to work, they want to work, 18 hours a day or whatever, 17 hours a day. They go early in the morning and commute a couple hours, and then they do their whole work and come back at 10 p.m. I know people like that, and they're doing austerity, but they're doing it for different reasons. So we do take up an austerity, but we take it up for material reasons. But we should do for some spiritual reasons. So for example, if you wake up early in the morning, you take a shower, you engage in chanting. These are practices that seem austere compared to the regular, materialistic mindset. And we should do so because it reminds us of Krishna. It reminds us of things that's beyond just this body. And we are not the body ultimately. We are the Atma that's within the body. So the Jivatma, in order to realize that, we practice all these things. And it's one of the four legs of Dharma. So Dharma means that which sustains everyone and everything. And Dharma has four principles. The first, well, there's different principles, but four is, we have, one is austerity, tapa. What's another one?
Mercy.
Mercy, daya, yes. Truth, satyam, yes. Sauchyam. So this is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'll talk about Srimad Bhagavatam a little bit, but these are the four pillars of Dharma, and you have to keep these four pillars so that it keeps you sane, because Dharma means that which sustains, and we need to follow a lifestyle that keeps us sane as spiritual beings in the material world. Otherwise, what happens is the mind gets diverted to all sorts of sense gratification in this world, and the mind can never get satisfaction from that. No matter how much you satisfy the senses are a bad master. No matter how much you try to satisfy them, you'll never be satisfied. So here it talks about satisfaction. So satisfaction means I'm satisfied with what I am and who I am and what I have around me. Not that I need this thing or that thing to be truly satisfied, or I'm following this influencer or that influencer to be happy. No, I'm happy with what I have, what God has given me in life, and what I can do with it. And if we engage that energy in proper purpose, like example, engaging in Krishna service, we offer food to Krishna, we engage in meditation. These are all good practices that are our own self-interest. If we consider the self to be the Atma, that's in our best interest. If we consider the self to be the body, then our self-interest is self-sense gratification. So it's all about perspective on how you look at it. And when we look at simplicity, Srila Prabhupada very much advocated for simple living, high thinking. That we don't live very complicated, we don't have very expensive habits. By nature's devotees don't gamble. These days, sports gambling is very popular. It's hard to avoid sports gambling. You'll see all these ads in Ontario and also in America. that you can bet basically from your phone. It used to be that if you want to do any gambling, you had to go to Las Vegas and do gambling there. Then it's called a Kali Yuga. Let's let the Kali Yuga be in Las Vegas, where all the sinful activities of prostitution and drinking, gambling. You ruin lives. People ruin lives by gambling. Now, from gambling, they said, okay, we can do it in outside of Nevada. Let's do it in Atlantic City, in New Jersey. So then now they've said, okay, just do it from your phone. And now it's come into Canada, and it's from your phone. People are just betting on silly things. Earlier it used to be, okay, we'll just go gamble at the casino or play some silly slot machine, but now it's just doing this. But these ruin lives. And what spirituality gives us is gives us guardrails. Just like if you may travel on a road, you may see there's some railing there by the roads, especially if you go in a mountainous region. If you're going in Banff or British Columbia or even here, you'll see some guardrails. If you're in Hamilton, right, there's some guardrails so the car doesn't go off the cliff. So similarly, to prevent us from going off our cliff of life, we must at least have some guardrails. And Srila Prabhupada has given us these guardrails that we can practice in the Western countries. And this is so important so that we stay on course. Otherwise, what happens? People go into depression, drugs, they get angry, they have a toxic mindset. So we can avoid all this by being spiritual, even by living in the material world. It's not that we have to wait until going into Goloka or Vaikuntha to practice all this. But within the material world, you can feel yourself becoming more and more spiritual. So that is simplicity. So simplicity is very important. You live a very simple life just to keep the body and soul together. Don't have expensive habits or expensive, extravagant, ways of living. Just live in a very simple way. Then comes gravity. So gravity means being sober-minded. So has anybody here been to a funeral? So you may notice at a funeral, that's a time when people are very sober-minded. Somebody passed away, you dare to offer your thoughts, you bring some flowers, you bring your presents, you console grieved ones, right? That's when people are very much sober. Even people who are very materially engrossed, they'll also be very, very sober in that time. But then once the funeral's done, a few days pass by and people just go back into their sort of habits without realizing that one day I'm going to be in such a situation. That was the most astonishing question that Yudhishthir answered. Like, what is the most astonishing question? He was asked by the Yaksha. And Yudhishthir said that people are dying left and right, but I think I'll live forever. This is the delusion of people. Right? So the concept of Vedas and Vedic discourses is to bring this awareness that there's more to life than just, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we should all be dead. We can live life thrilling at every moment by finding inner peace through spiritual practices. So gravity is very important. And self-control. So the mind is dissatisfied from sense enjoyment, but if we take whatever energy and propensity we have for sense gratification and engage it in chanting mantras or reading spiritual books or doing service or offering food to Krishna, these are various ways we can engage ourselves in the spiritual service. And when we have all this energy, all this time dedicated to spiritual service, naturally our attention from materialistic things goes away. And recently we were in India, and the family we were staying at, they said that watch, we have this on TV, that on TV, and me and Sitala realized like we don't watch TV very much, and people are so hooked. They get their children hooked, and he's like, oh, this is Ramayan's happening, that's happening. I'm like, well, we have the Bhagavatam, which is the uncorrupted version of spiritual science, and which describes the glories of Lord Rama. It describes Narasimhadev, it describes Krishna's pastimes. We have everything in here. So what's the need for all of this? Because you may have a presentation, but then is it authentic, right? Oftentimes people would present Ramayana or any of these themes, but they won't have an authentic presentation. They'll have their own sort of twist to it, except for probably the Narasimha movie. I think there was a devotee who was involved in it. So has anybody seen the Mahavatar Narasimha movie? Yeah, so that particular movie had influence of Krishna consciousness in it, it was not only a hit, but it was also actual factual based on the Bhagavatam. And you might have seen that it offers obeisances to or thanks to Srila Prabhupada and the Bhagavatam. So being authentic is very important. So that self-control needs to be there, and purification. So purification means being very straightforward. Oftentimes we live in a society where if we are at work, there's often backbiting and gossip and backstabbing. And if you are a person who's the most straightforward in nature and you practice that for a long time, you'll tend to attract that kind of energy. So it's best to be straightforward, because people here just take advantage of you and throw you to the wayside. Oftentimes people are just so much in love and infatuated with their career, they don't think of life other than this. They become very much defined by my career is who I really am, but actually you're not. Let's say if I were to fall sick, am I going to accept my boss to come next to my bedside with some soup, saying how are you doing? He's not going to do that, right? So we don't leave our heart. Yes, we go do our work, we do what we need to do, we work diligently, ethically, with integrity, but our heart belongs to Krishna, not with our boss, not for even our country. Some people are very nationalistic, they're proud of the country they are born in or the particular place they go to, and you see this even in the GTA, they'll have stickers of this country, that country pasted on their car, but ultimately, that's also limiting, because country is just somebody drew a border and there's politics within a country, so how can you be proud of it because so many bad things happen, right? So these are things that will fail us, but what won't fail us is ourself, which is eternal, the Jivatma, and the Paramatma, Krishna. The relationship is always there, so that is never fleeting. And here, what Prabhupada's recommendation for the mind to be austere, the best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. So we have a great campaign in preserving these Vedic sciences and knowledge called Srimad Bhagavatam. It's called the Bhadra campaign. Why? Because people don't know, right? Like I was traveling, I think a couple of years ago, we were going to India, and we stopped in London, and then we were going to Mumbai, I think, yeah. And then there's this gentleman who sat next to us. He had a tulsi mala. So we got very excited, because how common is that? You meet a person from UK who's wearing tulsi mala and sitting next to us. But unfortunately, he did not follow any principles. Non-veg, coffee and thing. But it's, he's going probably because some grandmother gave him the tulsi mala, and, probably from Pushti Marg tradition. And he was going to Gujarat and he had no idea. So why? Because the tradition's never taught, right? And the tradition doesn't get taught, it gets missed. So the best way to preserve Vedic tradition and knowledge is to read Vedic literature. And Srila Vyasadeva, who divided the 4 Vedas, gave us the 108 Upanishads, gave us the 18 Puranas, gave us a storehouse of wisdom literature, he ultimately wrote Srimad Bhagavatam because his guru Narad Muni said that, well, why are you dissatisfied? You're supposed to be very happy because you've written all these things, you know about, Purushottam, Krishna. Why have you done this? And it's because you haven't addressed Krishna in a direct way. It's very indirectly mentioned in the Upanishads. So because you haven't mentioned Krishna directly, you yourself, Veda Vyas, who's a great, great sage, who is, Sri Vishnu himself, he comes and he's dissatisfied, and Narad Muni tells him, because you need to write Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is the Amala Purana, which is the purest among all the Puranas, and it is the natural commentary on the Vedanta, which is the summary of the Vedas. So in this day and age, when we don't have the time, we don't have the memory, we don't have the strength to read all this, read all the Vedas, we read the 108 Upanishads, read all the Brahma Sutras and so forth, we have the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18 volumes, 12 cantos. It predicts Lord Buddha's birth, it predicts Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. It talks about Krishna, talks about leadership, talks about etiquette, deity worship, the Varnashram system. So many different topics is mentioned in Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Gita tells you what to do the Bhagavatam tells you how to do it. And the Srimad Bhagavatam will help us in our step towards Krishna by giving us information on Bhakti Yoga. The Bhagavad Gita gives you a fundamental foundation on what is Karma Yoga, yoga of activity, what is Jnana Yoga, yoga of knowledge. And it talks about Bhakti Yoga a little bit, but the Bhagavatam expands into Bhakti even more. So that's very important because we have to be single-minded focused on Bhakti. Otherwise, what happens is we can get distracted even in the Vedic path. Oh, let's do karma, this, that. But that doesn't yield us the proper direction. It's like when you're in university and you're taking a course. Okay, I'm going to take math, and I'm going to take psychology, and I'm going to take arts, and I'm going to take kinesiology. Then I'm going to take chemistry. Then I'm going to take, sciences on, philosophy, for example. You can take all these courses, but you're not going to get a degree in the end, right? If you want a degree, then you have to take a particular set of courses that have been given by professors, academics that have been accredited. So similarly, for us, if we want to make spiritual advancement, we follow, the Vishnu mantras, the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and if we want to go into the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, then it's the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But at least the Bhagavatam is universal for all Vaishnava traditions and all Vedic traditions. And it's important for us to follow that because that's going to really give us the example and inspiration on how we can go ahead. And the Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. Sometimes we wonder, okay, we have darshan of Krishna here, but when we go home, we may not have deities. What can we do? Well, Srimad Bhagavatam itself is a deity that you can offer bhoga to. It is Krishna, before he left to go back to his abode, he assured Uddhava that he will take form of the Srimad Bhagavatam and be present in the form of the sound vibration. So the Srimad Bhagavatam alone is enough for you to attain spiritual realization because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the different saintly people have recommended Srimad Bhagavatam. And actually, the Srimad Bhagavatam personally means a lot to me because the Srimad Bhagavatam gave me a lot of purification and solace when I was going through some confusing times in my life. And at that time, I was, not sure what I wanted to do. I was in university, and I don't know who God was and what my purpose was. I was seeking happiness, but I wasn't finding it in going to bars or going to nightclubs or spending a lot of money, earning a lot of money. I never found satisfaction in that. So luckily I found a Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 and it really changed my life for the better. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Srimad Bhagavatam. And actually I wasn't interested so much in Bhagavad Gita. I was more interested in Bhagavatam because the Bhagavatam has stories and philosophy combined. So it's a little bit easier for me to digest. And it focuses on bhakti, it's a scripture. And it just gave me direct connection to Krishna, whom I was always seeking. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is what we at the International Society for Krishna Consciousness are distributing. And our Minister for Book Distribution proclaimed that we want to distribute 100,008 Srimad Bhagavatam sets around the world, which is a very ambitious goal. But by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, anything's possible. And I know here in Oakville, I think 9 sets were distributed last year, and about 716 Bhagavad Gitas were distributed, which is wonderful. We did a record 26,662 Bhagavad Gitas last year, which in all of, I'm just talking about Canada, but worldwide we did 5 million Bhagavad Gitas. Why? Because people don't have knowledge of this culture. And we give Bhagavad Gita to really literally anybody. And, we don't really consider what one person's position is. Because if we do, then people who may not be quote unquote qualified may not be able to reform themselves. If someone looked at me and said, oh, you're still drinking alcohol, you're not a fit candidate for Bhagavatam, I probably wouldn't be coming to Krishna consciousness. But because Isckon, under Srila Prabhupada's tutelage, was so broad-minded that we have Krishna consciousness literally in every country, even whether it's temples or underground, yoga studios, whatever. Recently, when we were leaving India, unfortunately, many people due to the war got stuck. So they got stuck in, they flew to Middle East to, was it Kuwait? And in Kuwait, they got stuck for 5-6 days, right? So now they're planning, okay, they're going to take some prasadam with them and they'll go back to the US or wherever they're going to. But because they were in Bahrain or they were in Kuwait, sorry, and there were some devotees there, some devotees came and gave them prasadam for multiple days. And that's only because of Srila Prabhupada that you can go to a Muslim country and there are devotees there, whether it's the UAE or Saudi Arabia, and go and get prasadam from devotees for not only one day, it's like strangers, complete strangers, to find this sort of sattvic food in these sort of countries very difficult, but they were able to do so because of Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So yes, I was mentioning in a call earlier today to devotees in Vancouver that Isckon may not have the biggest marble temples and biggest institution and biggest congregations, but what we do have is what Srila Prabhupada emphasized is the Sampradaya and the Guru Parampara system, which connects us to Krishna. What really connects us to Krishna is this chain of master-disciple relationship that goes all the way from us, all the way to Krishna. And it feels like even though we physically are not in Vrindavan, mentally at least we are in Vrindavan. And that's very important, because you could literally be physically in Vrindavan and think, why am I in Vrindavan? I can go to Delhi, make more money. What is this place, right? But it's all about the mindset. And when you have the mindset of that I am in Vrindavan, even though I live in Halton region, and I'm with the traffic and different winter, snow and everything. But if you make your home like Vrindavan, then you have the greatest wealth. Because real wealth is spiritual wealth. It's not material wealth, because when we die, it's not like we take the money away. At the whenever there's a funeral and there's a will, then you'll find some relatives that come out of the woodwork who want something here, want something there, right? So you can't take your money away, but what you can take away is your spiritual consciousness. So your spiritual deposits that you do, the mantras you chant, the Bhagavatam you read, it's really, really important. So we have a Srimad Bhagavatam on the bookshelf or the book table outside, and we encourage at least one person take that Srimad Bhagavatam home, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is an investment in your spiritual life. People invest in so many different things. They go on retreats, spend $1,500, go to some retreat in South America, get some drugged up experience, come back, and then they come back to their miserable life. But the Bhagavatam, what's unique about it is by keeping it at home, it's naturally, because of the vibration that's present in the Bhagavatam, it will resonate throughout your home. And when you open and read it, even if you read 5-10 minutes a day, you will steadily make progress and advancement in spirituality. And you will know what's the meaning behind, even say Namaste. What's the meaning of Namaste? Can anyone tell me? The Bhagavatam has a definition, but I want to know what you know about Namaste. We say Namaste all the time, right? So what's the meaning? You offer your respect? Okay, anyone else? Yes?
The soul in me respects the soul in you.
The soul in me respects the soul in you. Okay, anyone else? Namastu, okay, in Sanskrit, yes?
I was just saying hello.
You does, okay, hello, okay. Any other?
Residing inside you is what you're doing now.
Yes, so that's technically the right definition is Namaste, that according to Srimad Bhagavatam, that I, Namaste, I'm offering my obeisances unto the Paramatma within the other person. Right, and thereby you also offer respect to the other person, but you also recognize that there is also God in that other person. Just like there's God in my heart, there's also God in your heart. So that is the true meaning of Namaste according to Srimad Bhagavatam. And all the mantras like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, so that comes from Narad Muni, but that's all described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Even the mantras for purification that we chant prior to deity worship comes from Srimad Bhagavatam. So all these different things I mentioned. What is the smallest denomination of matter? Atom. So atoms are mentioned in Bhagavatam far thousands of years ago before the scientists, right? And even kind of how does the baby develop in the womb, that is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, we read Srimad Bhagavatam to a couple of our friends who were expecting children, and they said that once the baby was born, they happened to be the most calmest kids they had because they had multiple children, and it's because we read Bhagavatam to them. We read second chapter, first canto. So the Bhagavatam is really, really a magical, mystical book. It's not a novel that you read like, Harry Potter or anything else and keep it aside, or a newspaper. People in India love reading newspapers, but again, how much can you read? Whereas you look at our literatures like Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ramayana, people don't get sick and tired of it. It's not like you read the Ramayana once and you keep it away, and it's the symptom of a spiritual book or a spiritual sound is that again and again you can read it, you can chant it, you never get tired of it. And if you want to, even people talk about being de-stressing their life, right? So the best way to de-stress and decompress is to read spiritual literature, because it uplifts us regardless of whatever stage or age of life we are in. It uplifts us to a higher sense of consciousness. And when we get that upliftment and inspiration, it inspires us to live our life to the highest potential. And don't we want that? We want to live our life to the highest potential. So the Bhagavatam invites us to do that. So these are ways in which we can really control the mind, because the Bhagavatam teaches us, the Bhagavad Gita teaches us how we can act in this world, what we should do, how we should do it. And predicts Lord Buddha's birth. It predicts a lot of things about Kali Yuga. For example, businesses will be based on deceit. Who thinks that's true in Kali? How about spiritual people will be known as spiritual people because of their external dress only? Have you seen that? Okay. How about in this age, taxes will be very high. Who feels that? Especially in this country. Yeah, so taxes will be very high. How about leaders? Political leaders will be cheats. Right? How about even, talking about Vedic culture, a person will be known as a Brahmin only because they wear a thread. Right? So all these things are mentioned as specific symptoms of Kali in 12th canto of Bhagavatam. And if you want to see the construct of the universe, where you see, Saturn and all these different planets, Earth, Moon, all of this is given in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, far before than the scientists ever came to realize it. So the Bhagavatam is really unique. It's the full body of Krishna. So you may see that here, you see the Lord Krishna in his Tribhanga form with the flute. And whenever you meditate from Lord Krishna's feet, going all the way to Lord Krishna's crown. So similarly, the Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna's full body. The first two cantos, Krishna's lotus feet. The third and fourth canto are Krishna's legs. The fifth canto is Krishna's navel. The sixth canto is Krishna's chest. The seventh and eighth canto are Krishna's arms. The ninth Krishna's throat. The 10th canto is Krishna's lotus face. The 11th canto is Krishna's forehead. And the 12th canto is Krishna's crown. You actually get a bonus of Srimad Bhagavatam, because just like we have Bhagavad Gita, there is also Uddhava Gita. Has anybody heard of Uddhava Gita? So that is Lord Krishna's conversation to Uddhava, and it goes into a little more detail than Bhagavad Gita itself. So that is mentioned in Canto 11. So that's the 11th canto that mentions Uddhava Gita. So you get Uddhava Gita, you get predictions of what's happening in Kali, you get to know about how do Pandavas retire. People want to eventually retire one day. But we can see how do the Pandavas retire. This is not covered in Mahabharata. This comes after the Mahabharata, where we get to know what happens. And ultimately, even when one is in retirement, you take the dog is following the Pandavas, and that dog is described to be dharma. That you don't leave your dharma even when you're in retired life or you're about to die. You always keep your dharma there. So all this comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or reflections. So I encourage you, at least one person, I'd be happy to take a picture or, chat more about it, but please take a set of Srimad Bhagavatam if you don't have it in your home. As I mentioned, retreats can be expensive, $1,000, $1,500, and especially in this day and age, it's becoming harder and harder to afford things as prices go up. But we have Srimad Bhagavatam for a whole 18 set volume, 12 cantos for $350, and that supports book printing and Sanatan Dharma, and that's your investment for your whole life, for your full family. So please consider taking a Srimad Bhagavatam set if you don't have it. It's changed my life, and I guarantee it will change yours. And I encourage, if there's any questions, we can open it up for any questions or discussions.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful, wonderful lecture. And it is definitely spiritual science. I feel like every university should teach it, how Prabhuji said, like how we learn moral science, why not spiritual science. So, any questions?
I have a couple of questions. Maybe I'll ask one and see if anybody else has any other questions.
Sure.
I've been in this, bhakti, this thing for more than 20 years now. And one thing that I hear constantly is that sense gratification, the word sense gratification. And at times, you get, sometimes, sorry to say, but sometimes you get tired of hearing sense gratification word itself also. And more what I was trying to get to is that, when your children ask, what, Isckon is anti-fun. Basically, anything that we feel that we are going to enjoy is that sense gratification. And people feel that, what kind of a life is that? Where you don't have anything that you want to do, it's sense gratification kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how do we give an answer to kids who are asking such a question?
Yeah, so this is an important point because other people, including children, will see that you're limiting your life so much. You're not doing this, you're not doing that. Well, one thing is, Srila Prabhupada definitely wanted us to have good, clean fun. And he very much did so with, chanting, dancing, and feasting. And we definitely avoid a lot of pitfalls because, let's say if you were to consider enjoyment as, okay, let me go have a drink. Well, alcohol is really toxic for you and it's really bad for the body. And everyone has a different experience. My experience or my answer is, I've been there and done that. I was even mentioning this past weekend, I was at a work conference and everyone's saying, you don't drink. And I said, once upon a time I used to drink. And I used to drink even illegal stuff, like 80% alcohol. And I've done really, really bad. I've gone to nightclubs, I've drank, I've done things that I shouldn't have done. And, I've had non-vegetarian food. But again, how long can that make me happy? It's all temporary. That's one thing. Number two is, you should explain that just like, somebody was mentioning to me that my enjoyment is to just listen to Bollywood music. He said, this is my enjoyment. And then I didn't flinch at that. I just said, okay. But then he understood that by following a spiritual life, I also find enjoyment, but it's just different from what it looks like. So enjoyment is enjoyment. Prabhupada says we should feel thrill at every step. Now, in our own Krishna consciousness, we should also live that sort of way and have a balanced life. For example, we go for hikes, we go for walks along the beach in the summer. So sometimes we can't limit Krishna consciousness just to ringing the bell at home, doing japa. If we show that, then naturally our children, our relatives will think, what you're doing is a little too much. But if you show some sort of middle ground, a third space, which is not the temple, not Isckon Oakville, not your home, but do something outside that's fun, that's jovial, let's get people to let's do kirtan by the beach, or let's just have prasadam and do some prasadam picnic at Toronto Islands. Do something fun like that so that you can relate more to them. And this way you can show that we are being Krishna conscious and also having good clean fun. I think the bridges we can mend with that is tremendous, and I think that's one way to show that this is not sense gratification, but rather because Krishna is enjoying it, it is spiritual sense gratification, and that's something that's totally bona fide.
Sometimes, sorry, I'm not going to just like push it a bit more there. Like I understand that sometimes the fault is not necessarily in the kids, but sometimes the fault is in us in a way, because if you are not enjoying something, then and if you're just telling them to enjoy it or telling them to not, do the sense gratification, then it sometimes it doesn't work basically, because they don't see you happy.
Yeah.
If they don't see you happy, and they are not going to, understand that like it is, it is okay to leave all these things, right? Like, and the thing is that they naturally wants to explore, bro. And it's not always, like that you can, even if you show them that you are happy, even if you tell them this is not right, but still they if they want to say that like, I don't want to limit, or I don't want to make my choices based on your experience, but I want
Right.
to. And then you have nothing, like, I mean, there's not a lot you can do after that. If you,
Yeah, like one thing is about karma is like even though you may have children, they may not be of the same consciousness as you are, or your wife is, or your parents are. And what we can do is we can expose them to a positive lifestyle. But one thing they can do is, if you have any teenage children, the peers are definitely influential. And there is this bus tour that happens all over North America. Manoram Prabhu does it, and I was actually mentioning to one other, young girl who, sort of lost and, comes to Gita class, but nothing beyond that. At least go on this bus tour to get some association and experiences that are fun, that oftentimes we cannot do, right? Like I was mentoring a young boy. How much can I tell him, right? But when he hung out with those, young kids from Sharnagati village, he says, yes, I want to become vegetarian. I want to also be in this sort of way, because the peers are more influential. So one is peers. Second is that if they want to explore, they can explore. There's so many devotee children. I know that they live in a very devotee family and they just can't wait to go to the big city to enjoy themselves. So I think you have to find a middle ground where you're not being so restrictive to them. Allow them to explore, but then also give them choices in which, they can go to Alachua. Tickets to Orlando tend to be a little cheap from here because of Disney World. They can go experience like a festival there with all just the youths, right? Not with the parents. So this way they can get some fun Krishna consciousness, or the bus tour. There's so many ways in which we can just encourage them to do that, but ultimately just leave it up to Krishna that whatever they may do, you're there to just support them and bring them back if they make mistakes along the way. But it's one thing is to also explain things in a logical way. If you just explain things in sort of a superstitious or sort of, oh, my parents did this, they're not going to understand. But if you explain logically that, these things, why we follow is because, we want to live a natural way of life that's simple. It may be hard for them to, not engage in sense gratification, but eventually when they are becoming adults, they'll sort of get that slowly, if that's been infiltrated with them. But it takes time, because enjoyment's very easy here, especially in the Western world, right? It's easy to enjoy anything and distractions there, but as long as you give them a little bit of seed of exposure and just say, okay, let's go for just a picnic, we'll do something fun, it may give them some exposure that's a little different.
So Prabhuji, these bus tours are only for youth, not for adults like us.
Adults, we should know better, right?
No.
So the youth, the reason why is because if you're a late teenager or early 20s, there's a lot of change, right? And I've lived mostly in North America, so it's like there's a lot of change. You're trying to find out who you are. You're trying to find out about your friends. You're trying to find out about what type of lifestyle you want to live, what type of clothes you want to wear. It's a confusing time of life. And that's when you have these bus tours that you go for, a full summer, you go across USA and Canada, you do fun things like, camping or, you're jumping into the river, going to Rath Yatra festival, doing seva, but mostly within your age group. So when they're within the age group, they're most likely going to be influenced better than what I can tell them or some parent can
Right.
tell them. So that's one. For adults, there's always, there's Sadhu Sangha, there's Vaishnava Sangha, which is in Stratford. These are all places where we can get sort of a spiritual recharge, that we don't have to go too far away, so the drive away or a flight away. And we should do these things so that it inspires us in our Krishna consciousness. We see other practitioners, like when we recently went to India, we went to these 2 weeks of pilgrimage of the heart, which is a seva and the dham. And we met so many people who know so much more knowledge than me and memorize so many mantras and shlokas, and they're like walking Srimad Bhagavatams. And it was amazing because, we're just mostly in our little bubble here, but you get to see people who are so well versed in so many things, and it's like, man, I don't even know so much about Gaudiya Vaishnava bhajans and Brahma Samhita and so forth. Bhagavad Gita, we were chanting 11th chapter. It was just an amazing. So there's always different sanghas you can select, but of course, coming and serving here and finding once a year to go someplace is always good for you. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Maybe we can show some pictures from the.
Sure. I have one more question I wanted to ask you.
Oh my God. Go ahead.
Want everybody to benefit from your
Sure.
So you mentioned about getting a Bhagavatam today, or one thing, and you also talked about how the normal Sanskritically things are an illusion basically. It's
Yeah.
It's a promise which is never fulfilled.
Never
basically,
fulfilled.
So, but in spite of knowing everything, when it comes to you want to you did something like a lot of mind is involved, and maybe you prepared for a class or something, and then you want to relax, why you never want to pick up a book, and you always want to pick up your phone and watch something which is completely an illusion, which is just a false promise there. Why that trend doesn't change so easily?
That trend doesn't change so easily because naturally we as human beings, we are gravitated towards the lower modes of material nature. We're gravitated towards the modes of passion and darkness. Mode of goodness requires effort. Like if we want to stay in good health, we have to cook healthy food, we have to partake in that because that requires effort. We have to exercise, but it's easy for us to sit on the couch, right? So similarly with our phones, because the phones require so much of our attention, and it's basically, the algorithms, the AI, they're basically listening to us all the time, and they're, or they see what we see, and they want to hook us onto that, but it's not really good for our health, and we should have guardrails. Just like, again, we talked about some boundaries, so we should also have boundaries as adults, because if we don't, then children will also emulate us, and people just stick the iPad in front of the kids, and it's actually the worst. Because if you look at Krishna and Balaram, they never played until 11 or 12 years old with things. But now, person was not even 2 years old has iPad in front of them. Like I see that and it's so bad. But we should have guardrails to say that I'm going to use the phone for as much as I need to get my A to Z done. But in terms of real knowledge, I'll get it from a book, because from this I'm not going to get distracted from this ad or that ad. So sometimes we need to just have self-discipline and just say, okay, 15 minutes. You should have a personal goal. 15 minutes, I'm going to read Bhagavatam. So if you have a personal goal, that will actually help you. So every day, 15 minutes before going to bed, it's my Bhagavad Gita time or Srimad Bhagavatam time. And then if this becomes a habit over several months, then every day you think, okay, I can't go to bed today if I haven't done my 15 minutes of Bhagavatam. And when you do that, you automatically keep that phone away and think, am I spending good time when I'm using the phone? Are they things that I could not do? And this is something that we as devotees or practitioners need to be very wary of, because if you're just scrolling, then we're just letting our mind dictate to us what to do. And the mind becomes the boss instead of us. So we need to have willpower, just like we wake up in the morning, we may have to, wake up and do different chores. Similarly, we must say no and keep the phone at bay and make sure we take dedicated time for Krishna. And saying that the phone is ultimately going to distract me, but the book is always going to keep me in course. So it requires willpower and some self-regulation in that matter, and some practical tips. If I'm a part of a WhatsApp group that's not really serving me or not really relevant to me, I exit out. If social media, I don't need to be on certain channels, I try to avoid it. And I by and large want to sleep on time, wake up on time, so that I can have a good sleep schedule, circadian rhythm. All these things are important, and just think from a health perspective. I want to do things that's healthy, and I avoid these things which are unnecessary and unsafe. All right,
Thank you.
so we'll have some pictures. So we went on pilgrimage. So this is a picture of me distributing Bengali books. We did so many Bengali books in Radhakund. And who here knows how to read?
Read what, Bengali?
No, just read any language. Any language. So this is the first time I distributed books to people who don't know how to read. So they speak Bengali, but they don't know how to read. But they were so appreciative. They took the book. So this is in Radhakund. And in Radhakund, they were very pious people. And ultimately, it was, I told these gentlemen, why don't you distribute these books to people you know who read? So they're like, okay, sure. So then they piously took them. So when we went to the Dham, we didn't go there just for spiritual sightseeing, but we actually went there to do seva. And obviously you can see how much japa mala and kanti malas are there. It's like you can go buy the whole shop, but it was really nice. And again, we went there barefoot. So it's not that we go there with our shoes and, luxurious sort of way we kind of go about our business here, but we went barefoot. So next. So this is another Bengali book. Went to a lady in Radhakund. So my wife Sita Lakund, she did the book distribution there. And it was just an amazing experience. One is to go to, there are three types of people who go to a holy place. One is some people just go there to enjoy. Chalo, let's go to Vrindavan, we'll do this, see this temple, get blessings and come back. Second is people go there to advance in bhakti. And the third is to actually go there and do seva in the dham. If you're going there to just advance in bhakti, stay no more than 3 nights. That's Srila Prabhupada's recommendation. If you want to stay more than 3 nights, then actually do some seva in the dham. So yes, next. This is Govardhan Hill. So this is from a Narsimhadev temple that is part of the Sri Vaishnav Sampradaya. And so we visited the Sri Sampradaya temple of Lakshmi Narsimha. And I was just doing japa there. So it was a really nice experience, and people going circumambulating the hill. Next. So this is Uddhava Kund. So remember I talked about Bhagavad Gita and Uddhava Gita. So Uddhava came to Vrindavan, and Krishna said, why don't you teach the gopis Jnana Yoga? And instead, Uddhava learned Bhakti Yoga. So Uddhava Kund, I was there, and we met this gentleman who wanted Hindi. He took Hindi Bhagavad Gita. And usually small books are really easy to do because the pilgrims can give, 50 rupees, 100 rupees like that. But big books are a little bit challenging, but they took big books here at the Uddhava Kund. Next. So this was at Raman Reti Gokul, and we met these folks who are throwing colors and rolling around in the soft sand. It was a really nice experience. And they took some Hindi Bhagavad Gitas, Hindi books, some stickers, some lollipops. Next. So this was at the Samadhi of Gopal Krishna Maharaj, where Maharaj was the GBC for Canada for many decades, and he served the movement very well. So I was reading all of our book scores, including Oakville's book scores for Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam in front of Maharaj's Samadhi. He visited Canada every year. And since he departed in 2024, This is the first time I was visiting Vrindavan, so I was reading all of our scores, including Oak Hills. Next. This is another picture of offering to Maharaj. This is Srila Prabhupada's quarters, where he took prasadam, his kitchen. You can see the picture on the top left where Prabhupada would have prasadam and look outside. So this is the same, yeah, so Srila Prabhupada, this is at the Radha Damodar temple. And we have to feel fortunate because Prabhupada could have stayed there. He could have said, most sadhus die in Vrindavan. Why should I come to Canada and America and UK to spread this Vaishnava culture? Why bother doing that? He could have stayed there and lived comfortably like most sadhus did. But why we do Guru Puja every day is to honor Srila Prabhupada, who came to the Western countries, who came to Montreal, who came to Toronto, and he really saved us from bad consciousness. So next. This Vaisheshika Prabhu was a Prabhupada disciple, and Nirakuda Mataji was laughing there. So this is a conversation. So I was having a serious question because one Brahmin got really upset at me. So we were distributing books, and we were, you know how in some temples you give a little sugar candy as prasad, and they offer it to the deities. So we were giving rock candy, so we were giving some lollipops because Srila Prabhupada said that's okay to offer to the deities and give it as prasadam. So we approached this Brahmin's house outside in Jagannath Puri, outside the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And we were giving this, and he said, this is not prasadam. Prasadam is Chappan Bhog offered to Lord Jagannath. And then his other Brahmin says, who taught you this? I said, well, our acharyas have taught us this is sugar candy, we can offer it to the Lord. No, you're wrong, your whole Guru Parampara is incorrect. And I felt very offended by this, so I naturally left because I noticed that this Brahmin he was in a bad mood. He was yelling at the laborers and all that. And sometimes you'll find a street sweeper who'll give a donation for books. So sometimes you'll find Brahmins are so arrogant. And I was telling Vaisheshika Prabhu that, it's like I've never had such an experience before. And Maharaj mentioned that you have to feel sorry for such Brahmins. Because, they're rejecting knowledge and they just want to be very puffed up. And sometimes in Jagannath Puri you see that. So next. So this is at the airport in Bhubaneswar. And this person just gave a 500 rupee donation, which is, almost $10, which is a big amount there. And we distributed some books in Hindi. He's going to, Chhattisgarh, and, we are going to Delhi. But we had our book bag and we still did books even at the airport. So next. This is the Jagannath Puri temple. Out of respect for my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Marg Swami, we did not go into the temple because Maharaj wouldn't be allowed in. So naturally, only because of Guru, we get to see Krishna. But by seeing the Sudarshan Chakra on top, that is as good as seeing Lord Jagannath. So seeing the Sudarshan Chakra with the flag and it's flapping in the winds. We did so many books at the Jagannath temple. Lots of Odia and Bengali books. So, and also I have, maybe for one of the devotees, I have some Jagannath Puri Prasadam for all of you. So if maybe one of you can come and break this into pieces so that we can distribute all to everyone. So I brought some Jagannath Prasadam. Hare Krishna. So it's called Kaja. So here, if you go to the next one. So this gentleman, there's very caste consciousness, unfortunately, especially in Orissa. And they're all Bengali bus drivers. And he said, we don't follow any principles. Niyam palan nahi karte. We don't follow any principles. I said, no problem. I used to drink before while I was reading Bhagavatam. So you can take this knowledge. So this is what Isckon's doing. It's giving knowledge to people who would normally don't even have, they think that Bhagavad Gita is not for them. Imagine, this is a people of old Sanatan background think that Bhagavad Gita is not for them. This is the first time he's ever held a Bhagavad Gita. Imagine how sad it is in India. But we are giving knowledge, and whatever donation they give, and these people give donations. Even if it's 200 rupees, we just give him the Bhagavad Gita. And even, I'm next to a bucket of onions. I'm getting the onion smell. So it's like, no problem, I'll sit and talk to you guys and give you Bhagavad Gita. And this is at a bus station. So the bus station, I was, there barefoot, and your feet become black after a time. So yeah, next. So again, this is the bus station again, one of the dirtiest places I've been to. It's just a regular, long-term or long-distance buses from Bengal, they come, or from Andhra. And again, Bengali, these are all the bus drivers taking the Bengali Bhagavad Gita. This is Jagannath Prasadam. For those who you don't know, so many different items offered to Lord Jagannath every day in these pots, cooked in these pots, stacked upon each other, and all local vegetables, and it's all great. Next.
Ask her if she wants.
So this is the Bhadra Purnima Srimad Bhagavatam sets. We are not in this picture because we are distributing books. But you see, we all got together, we distributed Bhagavad Gita to all the police. The police came and said, what are you doing here? And then once we said distributing Bhagavad Gita, they said, okay, great. Then they all bought Bhagavad Gitas from us. So police people purchased Bhagavad Gitas. Next. So this is Danda Banga, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu had pastimes, and Nityananda Prabhu broke Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's danda and threw it in the river. But see how nicely, the river is in the pristine condition. So, yeah. So this is distributing books in Odia. So see, this person is just selling some kartals, selling some balloons, right? But they're giving donations for books. So sometimes, in Oakville, we go to $1 million, homes, and they don't even get a single dollar for Bhagavad Gita. And you have a person who's on the street who, I don't know, doesn't make much money every day, but he's giving for 200 rupees, right? And here people don't want to give $1 and they live in $1 million or $2 million house. It's all about perspective. So again, this is our technique. We would just have the phone pay, GPay. We would have the language cards, and we wouldn't do much talking. We would just give the lollipop, the sticker, the book, and then we would just showcase. So this is the Isckon temple in Puri. So, it's kind of it's a smaller center by the Haridas Thakur Samadhi. So we were just doing book distribution this year. All right, Hare Krishna. So hopefully that was a nice explanation as well, and we'll go on to our next program.
Thank you, Prabhuji. A big round of applause for Prabhuji for showing so beautiful and the pictures. Now let us move on to the next segment. I request everyone to please raise and get ready for our closing statement. Hare Krishna.
Sorry.
Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare
His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parikajikacharya Aswata Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnupada Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jai Vishnupada Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Jai Vishnupada Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sat Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamkund Radhakund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories assembled always Hare Krishna. All glories assembled always Hare Krishna. All glories assembled always Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Books are outside if anyone is interested in buying, please click the link.